Question, you mentioned that it's always better to take the option for the lump sum, but don't, and the business that you work for appealed to people who wanted to take a lump sum in lieu of getting a payout over time. But now, don't most of the state lotteries offer you the option of taking a lump sum?
They absolutely do, and they do for one reason. The secondary market that I was a part of, we find, listen, this secondary market was absolutely legal, 100% legal. It didn't need to cut any corners because the getting was so good playing it straight. And one of the things that the lump sum industry did was expose the myth of the lottery. You know, why do they pay these annuities? Why, historically, up until the year 2000, had they paid these these lottery prizes over 20 or 25 years?
Allow them to raise jackpots, make the jackpots.
Right, make it look bigger.
Sexy. It's marketing and sales. Would you rather go play the lottery if it's worth $5 million or 10? More people are going to be interested if it's worth $5 million than if it's worth $2 million. And why do you think now that these lotteries, as they get bigger and bigger, and you see these huge hundreds of millions of dollar jackpots, and that's when you start to see the demographics of the people in line at the 7-Eleven change. Suddenly it's not such a down and out, exclusively down and out crowd. There's a few more. Who are you? Well, I'm a doctor. You know, people kind of, and, you know. And so the lotteries. Why do you think Muscle and all these other organizations that started the Powerball and what's the other big one?
Mega Millions.
Mega Millions. Thank you. They have done that so that a few of us will get in that line too. But the reason that they started to allow lumping out at the time of the win was finally the secondary market had exposed the myth, which was there is no $1 million. I mean, here's a Houdini trick. There never was. There never was.
You had mentioned earlier that in Oregon, as an adjunct to the lottery, they allowed video poker.
Yep.
Was the video poker game interactive such that there was an element of skill involved in it, or was it purely just a straight dealing out and whatever was on the machine, that's what was your...
Well, the only element of skill would be if you were sitting in a casino in Vegas or Atlantic City or wherever else, in that if you were smart enough to know that, hey, I should keep an ace, basic poker knowledge, like if you're playing 5-card draw,
sure.
It's, hey, those 2 jacks are good, keep those, and ask for 3 new cards. But after that, right, and to add to that, as far as the perception of control, there's also the interactive nature. You know, sitting in a bar with a cold beer and a cigarette, or your 8th cold beer, and playing this game where you can press the buttons and you can make choices and there's great music going, is very different than driving up to the Quickie Mart and buying a $1 ticket and putting it in your wallet and going to see what happened on Saturday night. And so whether or not it's interactive, the game itself, the atmosphere that is created for players to sit down and there's an ambiance. Every bar, you know, they don't put them in churches, they put them in bars. And in bars are typically where people go to loosen up and have a drink and unwind. And so all of a sudden you make these connections, these mental psychological connections between relaxation and playing the video poker machines, and it is a deadly combination.
Leads to my question. We know that trend has occurred in New York and Oregon and Tennessee. Can you give us a general wrap of how fast that's expanding and in what states they've gone to this video gambling as part of the lottery?
I think what's happening is that in every state, and again, I'm not a policy expert, and so I can't sit here and say this one, this one, this one, and this one, but I can tell you from my research, which frankly a lot of it comes from stuff you've said, so maybe you should answer the question. But my research has yes, that's right. That it pops its head up, and people do check the temperature, depending on who the governors are, what the temperature is of the state. For example, in these economic times, as we've been told several times today, more and more states are willing to listen more than they would a few years ago. And even the states, you know, one of the things, the Bible Belt, of course, was traditionally the area of the country that resisted the lotteries. But even the Bible Belt now is starting to succumb to it because what choices do they have? And it's, you know, they say there are no atheists in foxholes. Well, in a sense, these are, you know, even these states that have always stood on principle and said no. You know, 43 states have said yes, and the ones who are holding on for dear life.
Can you give us a background, you know, like any industry, what was the close rate? Or can you explain, you know, for every 4 people you called, you'd get 3 hits, or was there...
Well, the close rate, let me put it to you this way. You know, there, in essence, there are 2 types of sales.
And what lingo did you use? I mean, surely you had your own lingo.
A lot like this. Charming. They're really, you know, they're in essence 2 types of sales. There are high volume, low margin sales, and high margin, low volume sales. You know, a guy can sell 100 Snickers bars or 10,000 Snickers bars, but he's only going to make so many pennies off of those sales.
Sure.
One of the beauties of this industry, if you're looking at it from a business standpoint, is that one deal, can change not only your week or your quarter or your year, but your life. Because think about who you're in business with. These are people who have been handed, and sometimes tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars, and don't really know what to do with it. Well, along comes you to help them make those decisions. And so you're clearly, a great month would be if you did 15 deals. A fantastic month. But you could do 3 deals and have a brilliant year. Because it's all about, because it's unregulated, we used to call it, you know, capitalism in its purest form. I mean, another thing we used to say is that we played the lottery every day, we just never bought tickets. Okay? Because you go out, and if there are 2 people that won the exact lottery prize, they split the prize, so the exact same thing. They each won $2 million on the same day in the same state. One comes in and has great representation, advisors, lawyers, people telling them what to do, and another fellow, the same exact winner, but just a different person, comes in and has blown through their money and has debts and doesn't have financial advisors. Who do you think is going to get a better deal? There's no regulation that says, well, wait a second, they both are this tall with this much money and they fit into this box, so they're owed this much money. If I could get you to take $400,000 for your prize, but I had to give him $650,000, well, so be it. And that was one of the beauties of the industry, but really one of the problems with the regulation or the lack thereof is that look who these poor winners are up against. Really, and just because it's a very blue-collar crowd, it was an incredibly sophisticated sale.